Back on Sportsbit, Pauly and Teddy, betting insight today, Wednesday, July 6th, big game breakdown. Going to be Pittsburgh and St. Louis and the Royals against the Blue Jays. No deep dive today. Phil Steele is podcast only, audio only rather. You can go to sportsbookreview.com. It's Big Ten and Pac-12 today, so parts 2, 3, and 4 the rest of the week. Great information, sportsbookreview.com. So no Phil Steele means no deep dive. We will start the NFC North coming up on Thursday with the Chicago Bears. Don't forget Adam Hill, UFC 200 preview, the weekend preview show. UFC 200 coming up on Friday's show. That'll be dynamite, the best card they've ever done. Bad beats, bad bets. How about these sports books that cleaned up, Teddy, knocking out all those parlays early?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, one sportsbook director that I talked to. Okay, the Cubs lost, the Red Sox lost, the Rays lost, the Nationals lost. He was able to grade all of his parlays for the entire night. No sweats left for any of the West Coast games.
Oh.
All those teams connected to parlays that were already dead, Pauly, and every one of them on the wrong end of a line move.
The Cubs went up to 325 and got beat again.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs were bet up for as low as 225 to as high as 325. You know, and of course, nice for the bookmakers to know that about half their parlay liability for the day was already gone. Zach Cozart with the early 2-run bomb. Reds up 4-0 in the second and never trailed. And Pauly, what do we think about the Chicago Cubs right now? This team, we're talking about them as a historic team.
Yep.
Through the first 2 months of the season. Kind of like we were talking about the Golden State Warriors that way in the NBA. I'm looking at the Cubs to see a team that stinks right now.
Well, you're right. You're right. You throw out what happened, beating up on the Reds, who are awful. Swept against the Mets, struggled. They got swept by the Cardinals at home. Look what's happened here. You throw out the results against the Reds. And the pitching, especially what's going on with Arrieta, is cause for concern.
Well, yeah, Arrieta and Lester getting lit up and Lackey getting lit up. And, of course, let's not forget, they've got the entire NL starting infield in the All-Star game, which is something that I believe happened once in 1963 with the St. Louis Cardinals. And they got, a good handful of other All-Stars. Fowler's an All-Star and Arrieta, Lester, et cetera, et cetera. This is not a good baseball team right now. If you've been betting against the Cubs the last couple of weeks, you've made a lot of money.
Yeah.
You certainly made some money betting against the Cubs as $3 chalk yesterday.
Explain this move on the Braves.
I can't. I can, and I'm funny because throughout the course of the day, I talk to a handful of bettors on a daily basis. Guys that are, this is what they do for a living. They're not selling plays. They're not talking about plays. They're betting. They all liked Atlanta today. I couldn't figure out why, and I still don't understand why. Philly was bet down from minus 130 to minus 105. They scored in the first. They never trailed. This is a team that's on fire right now. Remember that June swoon?
Yeah.
They were hot early. They went cold in June. That's in the rearview mirror now. They scored 6 runs per game, a team that couldn't hit their last 14 overall. And if they hit, they win. Atlanta, on the other hand, that team right now looks pretty hopeless.
Oh, the Rays were an awful bet. C.J. Cron had 2 home runs and 4 RBIs. The Rays have lost 17 of 20.
Yeah, they took my money yesterday, and they went from minus 150 to minus 180. The money came against Lincecum, which is what I was betting on Tampa for. I wanted to bet against Lincecum. And, of course, then the announcement, Mike Trout's going to sit up for the Angels. Well, C.J. Cron, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, and the Angels scored 13 runs without Trout. The Rays' bullpen has really fallen apart of late, and that's pretty bad news for a team that can't hit. As you mentioned, 3-17 in their last 20 ball games. Tampa Bay can't be $1.80 against anybody.
Tigers were a bad bet. Indians, now they keep it going. 11-0, 12-0 against them so far on the season. This is the difference in the AL Central race.
Yeah, I mean, the AL Central leads 7.5 games. The Indians are 11-0 against the Tigers. Do the math. It's not that hard to figure out. Now, when you have one of these situations, Pauly, where you have 2 good teams, Detroit's not a bottom feeder. It's not like we have a first-place team beating up on a last-place team, but 2 teams that should be pretty close to one another, and one of them is dominating the other. Can you make any sort of case for betting on Detroit against Cleveland moving forward?
No.
I'm with you.
No way.
One of those deals, you either ride this trend. I think it's in Detroit's head right now. Brad Oswalt was talking about it. The Tigers in the clubhouse were talking about it, and that's always a problem. You want it to be loose and free in an MLB locker room. Not that way for Detroit right now.
The Rangers beat Price again.
Yeah, they beat Price. Really, they beat up on Boston's bullpen. The 7-2 final, included 4 in the top of the ninth. Was a really tough push. If you had the under 9, of course, that got bet up all the way to 9.5 throughout the course of the day. Another bet that the books won yesterday, but the Red Sox bet up from minus 170 to minus 210. Price and revenge. You know what? Boston, I don't think people realize how bad this team's been over the course of the last, 5 weeks or so. You know what their longest winning streak is since June 1st, Pauly?
What is it?
2 games.
Wow.
2-game winning streak. They're 13-18 since June 1st. 13 of their 18 losses have come at minus 120 or higher. 6 of those 18 losses come at minus 170 or higher. To put that number in perspective, they've only had 6 wins at minus 170 or higher during that span. Boston, like Chicago, they're really, and Tampa for that matter, burning bankrolls right now. They really are.
One more bad bet. NBA. Laker fans. Brian Windhorst earlier in the week said it was the worst, been the worst run here in Laker history, and he's right. Back-to-back-to-back horrible seasons. The absurd contract to Kobe, and they couldn't even get a meeting. They couldn't get a meeting with Kevin Durant. The Clippers did. The Lakers couldn't get a meeting, and they go out and they get Mozgov and Deng. These other teams improved. The Lakers are going to be lousy again.
Oh, they're not just going to be lousy, Paul. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA, just like they were last year and the year before and the year before
And the year
that.
before, yeah.
You called it a bad beat or a bad bet. I'm going to call it a bad. This is a bad beat for Lakers fans, man. There's no hope. When your big free agent moves are bringing in Timothy Mozgov, remember, they got all of that Kobe cap money coming off. Nobody wants to play for LA and play for the buses.
No.
They can't pay him enough. When you got all that cap money and you have all this roster, hey, come to LA and be a star. Hey, come lead our team. And the best 2 free agents you can find to sign are Timothy Mozgov for $64 million, mind you, and Luol Deng, who, remember, he was supposed to be a part of the big something in Miami, and he was just like the guy that never showed. 4 years, $72 million with the Lakers. Boy, they're going to be bad again next year. And the West has no mercy for weak teams. Really, really tough if you're a Laker fan. Right?
Tommy Boy has got to go. Jimmy Buss has got to go. And if they don't get Westbrook, unmitigated disaster. I don't think they'll get Westbrook. But forget about even being a championship contender. When's the next time in the foreseeable future you can say they'll even be a 7 or an 8 seed in that conference?
As of right now, you're going to take the over on any props involving LA and the playoffs. At least the Lakers in the playoffs. Clippers will be there again next year.
All right, big game breakdown up next, and the play of the day coming up on Sportsbit. Betting and insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Hey, sports betting fans, do you like high quality sports betting video content? I know you do. Come on. Tune into the MLB Odds Couple show today, July 6th, Wednesday show. Don't miss it.
Back on Sportsbit, big game breakdown as always. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Pirates and the Cardinals battle for second place in the NL Central. Cardinals are $1.68.5 the total. It's lock against Garcia. Lefty against lefty in St. Louis. And in this one, with injuries across their pitching staff, the Pirates needed Locke to snap out of it in the worst cycle of his career. Well, he delivered. He's doing it.
Oh, he sure has, Paul. And look, in matchups of southpaw versus southpaw, the first thing I want to know, who can hit lefties? Well, the Pirates, they're an above-average hitting team against southpaws. They have a .600 winning percentage against southpaw starters. The Cardinals rank number 25 in MLB and OPS versus lefties, and they have a sub-500 record against southpaw starters. So that's the very first thing I'm going to approach with this handicap. The second thing we got to look at is Jeff Locke. And you remember he had those horrible back-to-back games at Colorado, at the Mets. And that was when, remember, he had to take one for the team in Colorado?
Correct.
And he gave up 18 runs in 8.2 innings of those 2 starts. And the Pirates lost those games by a combined margin of 22-7. You say, Jeff Locke. And all of a sudden, 3-0, 1.93 in his last 3 starts. The first game off the disasters, he matched Madison Bumgarner pitch for pitch to win 1-0. He turned the corner, only 3 walks over his last 3 games, Paulie. And the season might be a roller coaster, but he's going against a guy who's as consistent as anybody.
Hey, look at this graphic. His career FIP. I mean, come on, forget about it. You just see the numbers staggering. Mr. Consistent. Ground ball's still the key. Never below 53.7% for any season, 57.8 in 2016, and 56.6 for his career. But St. Louis still juggling day to day on who's going to be the closer. What are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean, right now the Cards have a significant problem at the back end of the bullpen, and that makes me more than a little bit reluctant to lay this type of price with St. Louis tonight, even though Jaime Garcia has been, as you mentioned, that model of consistency when it comes to the fielding and independent pitching stats, which are as good a metric as you have in all of baseball for judging pitchers.
Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Game number 2, Royals and the Jays from Toronto. Kennedy against Stroman. Blue Jays $1.79 the total. They dominated the first 2 games. The Blue Jays outscored KC 14-5. Royals now 8 games out in the Central, and Ian Kennedy was able to get away with those fly balls in Petco. Not that bad at Kaufman, but at this stage of his career, he can't struggle on the road like this, or he's going to be finished.
Yeah, I mean, really, look at the last 2 seasons anywhere but Petco or Kaufman. Ian Kennedy, 5-16 with a 4.62 ERA. Those are not pretty. And of course, his ground ball rate this year, 33.3. That's a career low. He wasn't had a great ground ball rate the last couple years. It was 39 and 38% the last 2 years. But fly balls on the road are clearly trouble for this guy. Look at this graphic. Road home runs per 9 innings over the last 2 innings. Yeah, there he is on a list you don't want to be on, along with Sanchez and Perdomo, Kazmir, and Weaver, none of whom have been effective. Ian Kennedy is on that list.
Now more problems for the Royals. Late innings. Wade Davis was rock solid the last 3 years. Now he's on the DL.
Yeah, I mean, to say Wade Davis is rock solid, no. Wade Davis was as good as anyone in baseball. Wade Davis was Mariano Rivera in his prime. Look at the numbers. Again, ERA is not a great stat for relief pitchers. That being said, man, Wade Davis is lapping the field. He's at 101. A 101 ERA over 3 years, Pauly. And no one else is below $1.59. Not easy to be more than a half run better than anybody else over a 3-year span. And now KC doesn't have him moving forward. He'll be on the DL till after the All-Star break. And as you mentioned, the Royals now 8 games back in the AL Central. This year's team just doesn't smell like last year's team or the year before, Paul. After those back-to-back World Series runs, I don't think Kansas City's going anywhere right now.
And I thought the Blue Jays were done. They're playing good ball, and Stroman is at the other end of the spectrum from Kennedy. He has a chance to be one of the best ground ballers in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, he's prepared for that by getting in fielding pitching as part of his windup. The guy's got a wacky windup, but look at this. His 3rd season in the major leagues, and we're looking at ground ball rates over the last 3 years. You got some guys who you might want to be on this list. King Felix, obviously, Keuchel for Houston. There's Stroman at 57% ground balls. Look, the guy's open. He's 21, opened his big league career, 21-10 with a 4.03 ERA. But the fielding and independent pitching, the FIP, the FIP, says that 4.03 ERA is a little bit too high. It's 3.35 with the FIP and the adjusted fielding and pitching, the XFIP, at 3.45. So Stroman maybe a notch or two better than his mainstream numbers are showing.
For football, go to sportsbookreview.com. Check out part 2 of Phil Steele, and we start the NFC North previews coming up tomorrow. Money time, play of the day. We're going to soccer today. Semifinals, Euro 2016, betting number 26249, 26250. Wales, Portugal, under 2, minus $1.20. Hopefully 0-0 in this one. And they have to go to PKs. That's the Sportsbit play of the day. We're back Thursday. More football. And don't forget UFC coming up on the weekend preview with Adam Hill. Sportsbit, betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.